Tyler will no longer be a part of this family. Never.
You know that moment when someone takes a verbal sledgehammer to your soul at a family dinner? Yeah, well, welcome to my Tuesday night at Patricia Coleman's house, my mother-in-law's place, where apparently I'd been living rent-free in her head for 3 years, and she was finally ready to evict me. I'm Jake Martinez, 32, software engineer by trade, which means I spend my days solving problems that actually have logical solutions, unlike dealing with in-laws, where logic goes to die a slow, painful death. I'm the guy who shows up on time, brings wine nobody asked for but everyone drinks, and generally tries to keep peace, because I love my wife Emma and I'm not looking to start World War III over mashed potatoes. But sitting there watching Patricia hold court like she was hosting the freaking Oscars instead of scarfing down grocery store cake, I had this creeping feeling that tonight was different. Maybe it was how she kept glancing at me with that, "I've got something to say and you're not going to like it" expression. Or maybe it was how Emma kept fidgeting with her napkin like she was trying to fold it into a tiny white flag of surrender. The whole Coleman family was there doing their usual routine. Robert, my father-in-law, sat quietly, picking at his food, avoiding eye contact with everyone, which is basically his default setting. The man's got conflict avoidance down to an art form. Then there's Marcus, Emma's brother, busy scrolling through his phone because apparently even family dinner can't compete with whatever's happening on Instagram. Marcus is one of those guys who's perpetually between jobs, which is fancy speak, for he's mastered the art of being professionally unemployed. But the real star of this particular crap show? The ghost of Tyler, Emma's ex-boyfriend, who wasn't even at the table, but somehow managed to be the center of every conversation. Tyler this, Tyler that. Remember when Tyler fixed the garbage disposal? Remember when Tyler helped move furniture? I swear, if I had $1 for every time I heard about St. Tyler and his miraculous deeds, I could have retired by now. So there I was, cutting into my overcooked chicken and trying to nod along to another riveting story about Tyler's legendary ability to parallel park, when Patricia decided it was time to drop her little bombshell. She looked straight at me, like a sniper zeroing in, and with this sweet little smile that could have cut glass, she said, "You know, Jake, you'll never be as good as Tyler. You'll never measure up to what Emma had with him." The whole table went quiet. Not comfortable, food-focused quiet, but the kind of silence that feels like someone just sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Even Marcus looked up from his phone, which should have been my second clue that things were about to get real. My heart started doing this thing where it felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest, but weirdly enough, my voice came out steady, calmer than I felt. Maybe it was all those years of dealing with impossible deadlines and temperamental code that taught me how to keep cool when everything's falling apart. Or maybe I was just tired, bone deep, soul-crushing tired of being treated like the consolation prize in my own marriage. "You know what, Patricia," I said, setting down my fork with precision that would have made my mother proud. "If Tyler's so amazing, why don't you call him up and ask him to pay your bills? Because I'm done funding your lifestyle." The look on her face was priceless. Pure shock, like I just told her the Easter Bunny was a tax fraud. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, making her look like a fish gasping for air. And then she managed to sputter out, "What money? We've never received a single dollar from you." And that, ladies and gentlemen, was when I knew I had her. See, here's the thing about being a software engineer. We're big on documentation. We like records, receipts, data trails. We believe in evidence, not emotions. So when Patricia sat there and told me they'd never gotten any money from me, I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and started reading. "Let's see," I said, scrolling through 2 years' worth of transfers. March 2023, $2,400 for Dad's medications. April 2023, $2,800 for the roof leak. May 2023, $2,200 for utilities and car repair. I kept going. Month after month, reading out loud while the table got quieter and quieter. Each transfer was marked with a neat little note explaining what it was for. Because I'm nothing if not thorough. The silence that followed was the kind you hear in movies right before someone gets homicide. Robert's hands started shaking, and he set down his water glass like it weighed 50 pounds. Emma was gripping her napkin so hard I thought she might tear it in half. Marcus was staring at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. But the real kicker? The look on Patricia's face. All that confidence, all that superiority, just drained right out of her like someone had pulled the plug. She looked confused, then angry, then scared, cycling through emotions faster than a Windows computer trying to install updates. 2 years, I continued, putting my phone back in my pocket. 2 years of monthly transfers, every single one documented, every single one with a note explaining what it was for, and you're telling me you never got a penny? That's when Robert spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma, did you pass the money along? The question hung in the air like smoke, and I watched my wife's face cycle through about 17 different expressions before settling on something that looked like panic. For the first time since I'd known her, Emma Coleman Martinez was completely speechless. Let me paint you a picture of how this whole mess started, because nobody wakes up one day and decides to become a human ATM for people who can't even remember your name half the time. This was a slow burn, psychological torture that happens one tiny cut at a time until you wake up 3 years later, wondering how the heck you became the family punching bag. The first time I met the Coleman family was at some generic chain restaurant. Emma had been hyping up this dinner for weeks, going on about how important it was that her family liked me, how protective they were after the whole Tyler situation. Should have been my first red flag right there, but love makes you stupid, and I was operating at maximum stupidity levels. I showed up with flowers for Patricia and one of those fancy desserts from the bakery that costs more than most people's grocery budget. But from the moment I sat down, it was clear I was walking into a shrine dedicated to Saint Tyler, patron saint of apparently being perfect at everything. Patricia spent the first 20 minutes regaling me with tales of Tyler's legendary exploits, how he fixed their garbage disposal with nothing but a paperclip and sheer masculine energy, how he helped them move furniture and somehow made it fun instead of the back-breaking nightmare it actually is. Tyler was so handy, Patricia gushed, cutting into her steak like she was performing surgery. He could fix anything. Cars, computers, broken hearts. She actually said that last part with a straight face. Like Tyler was some kind of emotional superhero instead of just a guy who dated her daughter for 2 years. After I'd spent 2 hours listening to the gospel according to St. Tyler, Patricia turned to me with this sweet smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and said, "So, Jake, what do you do for work again?" I explained the software engineering thing, tried to make it sound interesting. Talked about problem solving and innovative solutions and all the other buzzwords we use to make sitting in front of a computer screen sound like we're curing cancer. Patricia nodded politely, then said, "That's nice, dear. Tyler was in construction, real hands-on work. He built things you could actually see and touch." And there it was. The first official comparison delivered with surgical precision right to my ego. Not even subtle about it, just a straight-up declaration that my job was somehow less real, less valuable, less manly than whatever Tyler had been doing with his magical construction hands. That dinner set the tone for everything that followed. Every family gathering became an opportunity for Patricia to reminisce about the good old days when Tyler was around to save the day. The rules started getting laid down pretty quickly after that. Nothing official, of course. Patricia was too smart for that, but there were definitely expectations, boundaries that I wasn't supposed to cross if I wanted to maintain peace. Don't mention money around the family because that's tacky. Don't touch their mail or bills because that's private family business. If I wanted to help financially, everything had to go through Emma first because Patricia didn't trust online banking and found direct transactions impersonal. The worst part? I went along with it. Every single ridiculous rule, every passive-aggressive comment, every not-so-subtle reminder that I wasn't Tyler and never would be Tyler. I swallowed it all with a smile because I loved Emma and because I genuinely thought that time would fix things. Here's the thing about getting married. Everyone tells you it's going to change everything, but nobody warns you that sometimes everything includes your spine mysteriously disappearing whenever your in-laws are around. Emma and I had this beautiful little wedding. Those first few months were actually pretty incredibly perfect. We had our routines down to a science. Coffee on the balcony every morning, hitting the grocery store at 10 p.m. just because we could. The kind of comfortable happiness that makes you understand why people write sappy songs about finding the one. But then the microcuts started. It started with Patricia's weekly phone calls, which became as regular and predictable as my morning alarm. Every Tuesday at exactly 7 p.m., Patricia would call Emma to catch up, which was code for, "Let me tell you everything that's wrong with your life and how Tyler would have handled it better." "Sweetheart, Patricia would say in that tone that managed to be both sweet and condescending at the same time. Tyler always knew how to handle contractors. Remember when your bathroom faucet was leaking? He had that fixed in 20 minutes without calling anyone. Or, Tyler used to drive me to all my doctor appointments when your father was working. Such a thoughtful boy. I miss having someone I could really depend on. Or my personal favorite. I saw Tyler at the grocery store yesterday. He asked about you, said he hopes you're happy. Such a mature attitude. And Emma would just sit there and take it, nodding along like this was perfectly normal conversation between a mother and her married daughter. I could see how it was affecting her, how these calls would leave her distracted and weird for hours afterward. Like Patricia had planted these little seeds of doubt that would sprout into full-blown insecurity by bedtime. Then there was Marcus's ongoing campaign to slowly steal everything I owned. It started small, borrowing my good screwdriver for just a quick project and somehow forgetting to return it. Then it was my impact driver, my level, my whole freaking toolbox. Every time I'd ask for my stuff back, I'd get this elaborate story about how he was definitely going to return it next week. He just needed to finish this one last thing. Family dinners became these elaborate performance pieces where everyone pretended we were all getting along great while playing out the same psychological warfare. Patricia would make passive-aggressive comments about my cooking. Tyler always helped in the kitchen. My clothes. Tyler had such a nice sense of style. My conversation skills. Tyler was so good at telling stories. And the group chats. Jesus Christ, the group chats. Patricia had created this family-only text thread that included everyone except me, because apparently I wasn't quite family enough to be included in discussions about family events, family decisions, or family drama. I'd find out about birthday parties, holiday plans, and family emergencies through Emma, like I was getting secondhand information about my own life. You know that moment when someone asks for help and every rational part of your brain starts screaming, trap, but your decent human being instincts override your survival skills? Yeah. Well, welcome to the day I became the Coleman family's personal ATM, complete with convenient monthly withdrawals and zero oversight. It was a Tuesday when Emma came home from work, looking like someone had run over her dog. "We need to talk," she said, which is universally recognized as the four most terrifying words in the English language. She launched into this whole speech about family responsibility and stepping up when people need you most. Turns out Robert had been having some health issues. Nothing life-threatening, just the usual collection of old man problems that come with the territory when you hit your 60s. Elevated pressure, some joint issues, the kind of stuff that requires regular doctor visits and a pharmacy's worth of medications that cost more than most people's car payments. The problem wasn't just the medical bills, though. According to Emma, the whole Coleman family financial situation was basically held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. Robert's insurance covered some stuff, but not everything. And Patricia had apparently been robbing Peter to pay Paul for months, juggling credit cards and payment plans like she was running some kind of small-scale Ponzi scheme. "They're drowning, Jake," Emma said, and I could see genuine worry in her eyes. "Dad's been skipping medications because they can't afford them all. Mom's behind on the electric bill, and their car needs repairs they can't pay for. They're too proud to ask for help." And here's the thing. I genuinely wanted to help. Robert was a good guy who'd gotten dealt a crappy hand, and watching him suffer because he couldn't afford basic medical care felt wrong on every conceivable level. You help family when they're in trouble. That's just basic human decency. "What do they need?" I asked, already doing mental calculations about our budget. That's when Emma hit me with the logistics of this brilliant plan. See, I couldn't just write Robert a check or transfer money directly to their accounts because Patricia had some very specific rules about how family financial assistance was supposed to work. She didn't trust online banking and found direct money transfers impersonal and embarrassing. "She wants everything to go through me," Emma explained. "I'll handle the transfers to their accounts, make sure the bills get paid, keep track of everything. That way Mom doesn't have to deal with the technology aspect, and Dad doesn't have to worry about the paperwork." So that's exactly what I did. I set up monthly transfers ranging from $2,200 to $2,800, depending on what bills were coming up and what emergencies had popped up that month. Every transfer got a neat little note in my banking app: Dad's medications, roof leak repair, utilities and car maintenance, medical copays and prescriptions. I'm a software engineer, remember? Documentation is basically a religious requirement in my profession. You ever notice how liars always give you just enough truth to keep you hooked, but never quite enough to see the whole picture? The first crack in their perfect little con showed up about 6 months into my generous benefactor routine. Patricia called Emma on a Thursday, breaking her sacred Tuesday tradition, absolutely losing her crap about a utility shutoff notice. Here's the thing, though. I had literally just sent $2,400 the previous month, specifically marked utilities and car repair. I even had the bank transfer screenshot saved on my phone because I'm the kind of obsessive-compulsive a-hole who documents everything. Didn't we just cover utilities last month? I asked Emma after she hung up from her mother's panic call. Oh, that money went to something else, she said, not quite making eye contact. There was an emergency with Dad's medications and Mom had to prioritize. You know how it is. Except I didn't know how it was because nobody had bothered to tell me that my carefully earmarked utility money had been redirected to some mysterious medical emergency that nobody could quite explain in detail. So I sent another $800 for the utility crisis, bringing my monthly contribution up to a cool $3,200. The medication thing started bothering me more and more, though. Robert would mention offhandedly that he was still being careful with his prescriptions, taking them every other day instead of daily to make them last longer, which seemed weird considering I was supposedly covering his pharmacy bills. Then there was Marcus's sudden lifestyle upgrade. For someone who was supposedly so broke that his parents couldn't afford basic utilities, he sure seemed to be living it up. New clothes, nights out at trendy bars, a fancy watch that probably cost more than my car payment. The real wake-up call came when I decided to ask Linda, the pharmacist at Robert's usual pill store, about his medication costs. Robert Coleman, she said, checking her computer. Oh, he's been doing much better with consistent refills lately. For a while there, he was only picking up about half his prescriptions each month. Said he couldn't afford the full regimen. But the last few months have been good. Only half his prescriptions for months, while I was sending thousands of dollars specifically marked for his medical care. I started paying closer attention after that. And then there was the thing with Emma's phone. We'd always been pretty open about technology, shared passwords, the kind of casual digital intimacy that comes with trusting someone completely. But suddenly, Emma was being weird about her phone, changing her banking password and getting defensive when I asked why. I'm not proud of what I did next. But desperate times call for desperate measures. One night when Emma was in the shower, I checked her phone. Instead of being paranoid, I found text messages that sent a chill down my spine. Messages from Patricia thanking her for handling Jake so well. Messages from Marcus asking when the next contribution was coming through. Messages discussing what to tell me about various emergencies and how to keep me from asking too many questions. And messages to Tyler. Dozens of them going back months. Not romantic messages, but the kind of casual, ongoing communication you have with someone who's still very much a part of your life. Updates about family drama, complaints about marriage problems, and yes, discussions about money transfers that were apparently helping Tyler deal with his own financial troubles. I sat there in our bedroom, holding my wife's phone and reading evidence of a conspiracy that involved literally every member of her family, plus her ex-boyfriend, all working together to systematically drain my bank account while making me feel guilty for asking basic questions about where my money was going. So here we are, back to Patricia's birthday dinner from heck. Except now you know the whole backstory about how I ended up sitting at that table with a phone full of evidence and a heart full of rage. After I dropped that bombshell about the documented transfers, the silence stretched out like a crime scene. Emma, Robert said again, his voice getting stronger now that he realized what might have been happening. Did you pass Jake's money along to us, or did you keep it? And that's when my beautiful, intelligent, supposedly trustworthy wife completely fell apart. It's not that simple, she started, which is universally recognized as the beginning of every explanation that's about to make things infinitely more complicated. There were circumstances and priorities, and you don't understand the whole situation. Try me, I said, leaning back in my chair. I'm pretty good with complicated situations. It's literally what I do for a living. That's when the real story started coming out, piece by piece. Turns out my monthly transfers hadn't been going into some noble fund for Robert's medical care and Patricia's utility bills. Instead, Emma had been running her own little financial services operation, using my money as a slush fund for whatever Coleman family crisis or opportunity happened to pop up that month. Marcus needed help with some debts, she admitted, not making eye contact with anyone at the table. Gambling debts, actually. Nothing serious, just some bad luck at the casino. But the people he owed money to weren't the kind of people you want to keep waiting for payment. Marcus had the decency to look embarrassed, at least. He was staring at his plate like he was trying to make it disappear through sheer force of will. But the real kicker was still coming. And Tyler needed help too, Emma said, dropping that bombshell like she was mentioning the weather instead of admitting she'd been sending my money to her ex-boyfriend. He was having financial troubles, and Mom was worried about him, and it was just supposed to be a one-time thing to help him get back on his feet. Patricia jumped in at that point, apparently deciding that being caught red-handed was the perfect time to defend her financial decisions. Tyler was like family, she said, her voice getting that defensive edge. He helped us so much when he and Emma were together, and when he called asking for help, what were we supposed to do? Turn our backs on someone who had been there for us? You were supposed to tell him to get a job like a normal adult, I said, my voice staying calm even though I felt like my head was about to explode. Or maybe suggest he call his own family how much, I asked, because at this point I needed to know the full scope of exactly how screwed I'd been getting. How much of my money went to Tyler? Emma looked like she was going to be sick. Maybe around $8,000 over the course of a year. $8 screwed up $1,000 of my money had gone to help my wife's ex-boyfriend deal with whatever financial disasters he'd created for himself. Money that I thought was paying for Robert's medications and Patricia's utility bills had instead been funding the continuing adventures of St. Tyler. Robert was just sitting there with his hands shaking, and I realized he was crying. Not loud, dramatic crying, but the quiet kind of tears that happen when you realize how badly you've been screwed over by people you trusted. I skip medications, he said quietly. For months, I skipped medications because I thought we couldn't afford them. I was trying to make them last longer, taking half doses, stretching everything because I didn't want to be a burden on the family. That hit me like a punch to the gut. This decent old man had been putting his health at risk, literally gambling with his life, because he thought his family was broke, while his daughter was using my money to subsidize her ex-boyfriend's lifestyle and her brother's gambling problem. So let me get this straight, I said, pulling out my phone again to double-check my records. Over the past 2 years, I sent approximately $55,000 to help with Robert's medical expenses and family emergencies. About $8,000 went to Tyler. Probably another $5,000 went to cover Marcus's gambling debts. And the rest was distributed between actual legitimate expenses and whatever other creative financial ventures you all decided to pursue with my money. The math was making everyone uncomfortable, probably because it highlighted exactly how much money we were talking about. $55,000 is a lot of serious money. For most people, it's a down payment on a house, a year's worth of car payments, the kind of money that can change someone's life if it's used responsibly. Instead, it had been used to fund an elaborate shell game where everyone got to play except the guy who was actually providing the funding. We were going to pay it back, Marcus said, finally finding his voice. All of it. I just needed time to get back on my feet. And Tyler was supposed to start paying us back once his situation improved. When I asked what was the timeline for these magical repayments that were going to make everything right, nobody had an answer for that. Because, of course, they didn't. You know that moment in action movies where the hero finally gets tired of being pushed around and decides to go full John Wick on everyone? Yeah. Well, this was my kitchen table version of that scene, except instead of tools and explosions, I had spreadsheets and a really good understanding of how to write legally binding agreements. I sat at the table, staring at the people who had treated me like their personal bank for 2 years. Something settled in my mind. It wasn't anger. I'd burned through that long ago. This was colder, a sharp kind of focus. All right, I said, pulling out my phone and opening the Notes app. Here's the plan. I'm setting new rules. You can agree, or I leave right now, and you all figure out how to pay your own bills. Patricia drew a breath to speak, but Robert shot her a look that stopped her flat. Let him finish, he said in a low voice. We owe him that. Rule 1, no more Tyler, not in stories, jokes, or casual talk. Don't even say his name when I'm here. If anyone brings him up, the deal ends on the spot. Rule 2, all money goes straight to the source. No transfers to Emma, no cash handoffs to Patricia, no secret family fund. If Robert needs medicine, I pay the pharmacy. If the power bill is due, I pay the utility company. If the roof leaks, I pay the contractor. Every cent is tracked, every payment gets a receipt, and everyone sees where the money goes. Rule 3. Total proof. I see every bill, every statement, every receipt for any expense you ask me to help with. Immediately. No more, Mom hates paperwork, or Dad doesn't want to bother you. If you want my help, I need exact numbers, due dates, and copies. Rule 4. Payback. Emma and Marcus owe me everything they took. About $20,000. Not borrowed, taken. I want a written plan with dates, amounts, and clear steps if a payment is missed. $20,000, Marcus said, his voice cracking like it did when he was 13. I don't have that kind of money. Then earn it, I said. Sell the watch. Sell anything you bought with my cash. Get a steady job instead of waiting for some miracle construction gig. Figure it out. Rule 5. No more money talk with Tyler. Emma blocks his number. Patricia stops answering his calls. If he shows up here looking for help, someone calls me so I can explain how unemployment works. You can't tell us who we can talk to, Patricia said, but the fight was gone from her voice. You're right, I said. I can't control who you talk to, but I can control who has access to my bank account. If Tyler is part of your money plans, I'm out. Your choice. I finished typing and looked around the table. Those are the terms. No changes. If you don't like them, ask Tyler to cover your expenses instead. The silence stretched long enough for me to wonder if I'd just wrecked my marriage over money. Then Robert spoke. Those are fair, he said, his voice steady. More than fair. Jake, I never knew the money for my medicine was being misused. He stopped and looked at Marcus and Emma with a disappointment that felt heavier than anger. A paralegal friend drafted a simple family support contract that spelled out every detail. Getting everyone to sign it was like a bad reality show. Patricia spent 20 minutes complaining that putting family finances in writing felt colder than stealing and lying for 2 years. Marcus pawned his expensive watch and other luxuries to make his first payment. Turns out when you have to pay back stolen money, designer gear loses its shine fast. He found steady work at a warehouse. Real labor, real paychecks, not the imaginary construction jobs he once talked about. The hardest shift was with Emma. We started marriage counseling because finding out your wife had been running a quiet money scheme with your savings isn't something you fix on your own. I never looked at it from your side, she admitted during one session. I was so busy trying to fix everyone else's problems that I didn't think about what lying to you was really doing. 3 months later, I sat in my freshly organized home office, staring at a spreadsheet that finally added up after 2 long years. Every bill went straight to the right provider. Every receipt was scanned and filed, and every dollar was tracked. No wondering if it fed someone's gambling or my wife's ex's lifestyle. Robert now takes his meds on time, knowing they're paid for, so he no longer has to stretch them like wartime rations. His vitals are stable, his joints ache less, and he carries that calm you see in someone no longer weighed down by the fear of surviving each day. Patricia picked up her banking app fast once she had reason to. She keeps a neat folder of receipts organized with care that would thrill any accountant. Utilities, doctor bills, repair notes, each one in order with my payment slips attached. Marcus works at the warehouse and never misses a payment. It's not fancy, he told me last week, holding out his paycheck with a proud grin, but it's honest, and I don't have to hide where the money comes from. Family dinners are still awkward, but now it's the normal kind of awkward. No Tyler tales, no sly digs at me, no fake shows meant to make me feel guilty for asking simple things. Just plain family quirks, the kind most people deal with without wild money plots. 6 months later, I'm in Robert and Patricia's living room on a quiet Sunday. For the first time in 3 years, no one's acting. No guilt games, no theater, just tea, Robert's pillbox on the coffee table, and a manila folder marked receipts that Patricia keeps up on her own. Robert reaches over, pats my shoulder, and says softly, "Thank you for everything, for staying when you didn't have to." I didn't win any fight or prove a point. I just set a boundary, clear, written, firm, about what I'd give and what I'd take. Somehow that line became the base for a real family, not a staged con with holiday meals. Love isn't cash, but cash without truth isn't love. It's just using people in the name of family duty. I won't be Tyler. I won't be second choice. I'll be Jake, a husband and son-in-law who helps with clarity and records, or not at all. And that, at last, is a life I can live with. The Tyler shrine is closed for good.